What's up YouTube? K.D.M Sports back at it again with some more MMA content for you guys. We all know the greatest of all time debate looms over all of us sports fans, and it's relatively subjective to our opinions. There's always arguments that can be made as to why you choose certain fighters over others. Well, today I got my list of UFC GOATs. We all know the 30-year history of the UFC and the evolution of the sport. So to start off my list, we're going to go from the lower weight classes to the higher weight classes, starting with the flyweights. And this one is a no-brainer. We gotta go with Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. Very well-rounded mixed martial artist with quick striking and elusive movement. He holds the record for the most takedowns in flyweight history and also co-holds the record for the latest finish in UFC history at 4 minutes and 59 seconds against Kyoji Horiguchi. Also the only UFC fighter to have over 10 takedowns in 3 different fights. He has the record for the most finishes in flyweight history as well, the most consecutive title defenses at 11. To see what he's doing over at ONE FC is special too, being a champion over there and winning a trilogy against Adriano Moraes. He has notable wins over Henry Cejudo, Tim Elliott, Ray Borg, John Dodson, and Joseph Benavidez. Now on to the Bantamweight division. Now this one isn't as clear cut because Bantamweight has never really had a long reigning dominant champion. But I'm gonna go with Aljamain Sterling. You can argue Dominic Cruz, but I just feel like he was injured a lot in his UFC career, and Aljo does have the most consecutive title defenses, most wins, and most consecutive wins in UFC Bantamweight history. He holds notable wins over Renan Barão, Pedro Munoz, Corey Sandhagen, Peter Yan, TJ Dillashaw, and Henry Cejudo. I know many people dislike Aljo. I'm not a big fan of Aljo either, but his resume is pretty impressive, and the numerous records he holds in the UFC Bantamweight division has to solidify his place as a UFC Bantamweight GOAT. Next up, we got the featherweight division, and for me, I grew up a Jose Aldo fan. But I think times have changed, and the featherweight GOAT that I'm going to put on this list is Alexander Volkanovski. He's just 2 title wins behind Jose Aldo, having 6, along with being second all-time in most consecutive wins in featherweight history. These records I think are going to be broken by Volk. I just don't see anyone beating him at featherweight. His resume is impressive too, having wins over Jose Aldo, Chad Mendes, Max Holloway 3 times, Brian Ortega, the Korean Zombie, and Yair Rodriguez. He's beaten everyone at featherweight. I think his resume is the greatest resume in featherweight history. Also, he challenged himself moving up to lightweight and performing impressively against Islam Makhachev. For lightweight, we gotta go with Khabib. I know some people may argue Charles Oliveira has a better resume, and I can agree with that too, but I just think if Charles were to pass Khabib as a lightweight GOAT, he'd need to get the belt back from Islam and defend the belt a couple more times. As of right now, Khabib is a no-brainer with an impressive 29-0 unbeaten record, beating everybody he could at the time, like RDA, Edson Barbosa, Conor, Dustin, Justin, and being the longest reigning lightweight champion, as well as never even really losing any rounds in his UFC career. I mean, when it comes to dominance, he's unparalleled. High-level fighters in the UFC knew what he was going to do and just couldn't stop it. He's also the first Muslim to win a UFC title. At welterweight, there's none other than one of the greatest fighters to ever live, the welterweight GOAT from my hometown, Georgia St. Pierre. A 3-time UFC welterweight champion, winning the belt twice and winning the interim. Most consecutive title defenses in welterweight history, most successful title defenses in welterweight history with 9 title defenses. He's also moved up in weight to capture the middleweight title against Michael Bisping back in 2017, becoming the 4th multi-divisional champion in UFC history. We can go on and on about his accomplishments. He holds wins over Nick Diaz, Johnny Hendricks, Carlos Condit, Michael Bisping, Josh Koscheck, BJ Penn, Jake Shields, Matt Hughes, and Sean Scherr. Next on my list is, and I know this one is a bit controversial as well, but I'm gonna go with Israel Adesanya, primarily due to his resume, the people he fought and beat. I just think Anderson had a lot of favorable matchups, and I think his resume, to be frank, is pretty weak. Izzy is the only 2-time middleweight champion in history. He's beaten Anderson Silva, albeit an out-of-prime Anderson, but he's also beaten Robert Whittaker, Marvin Vettori, Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa, Jared Cannonier, and Alex Pereira. At light heavyweight, who can argue against who many consider, and even myself, the overall GOAT? The Michael Jordan of the UFC, John Bones Jones. Basically almost every record he holds in the light heavyweight division in the UFC. This includes most title defenses, most wins, and longest win streak. He's the current heavyweight champion and former 2-time light heavyweight champion, as well as being the youngest ever UFC champion in history. He also has the most title wins in UFC history overall at 15. His resume includes wins over Cyril Gane for the heavyweight championship, Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson 2 times, Glover, Chael Sonnen, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, and Mauricio Hua. The list of this man's accomplishments is something else. When it comes to the overall most successful UFC fighter of all time, you gotta give it to John. I believe most would agree with this statement as well. I know John's had his controversies, but I mean, objectively, there's not much argument even if you look at the first half of his career before all the BS. At heavyweight, I got Stipe Miocic. It's a given. Most title defenses with 4, most consecutive title defenses, tied with Randy Couture with most heavyweight title wins, most finishes in heavyweight title fights, and most KOs in heavyweight title fights. The list goes on and on with how much Stipe has accomplished in the heavyweight division. His resume also includes wins over Daniel Cormier twice in a trilogy, Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, Fabricio Werdum, and Andrei Arlovski. These are my GOATs for each weight class in the UFC. The GOAT is always subjective, and it's hard to rank because there's been so many legends in the UFC, but this would be my list, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches my videos. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe, like, share, and if you've got any opinions, leave it in the comment section below.